Today is March 22nd, 2014. This is episode 94. This program is intended for informational and educational purposes only. Cryptocurrency is a new field of study. Consult your local futurist, lawyer, dog trainer, interior decorator, beautician, and colorist before making any decisions whatsoever for yourself. Welcome to Let's Talk Bitcoin, a twice-weekly show about the ideas, people, and projects building the digital economy and the future of money. My name is Adam B. Levine, and today we're looking at the privacy of Bitcoin in its various applications. First, Stephanie Murphy sat down with Christoph Atlas, author of the recent Anonymous Bitcoin book.
When you use Bitcoin privately, you're helping out the people that you do business with as well.
They talk privacy, security, and some of the myths and legends surrounding each in the world of Bitcoin. Then, at the end of January, I caught up with musician Ross Mincer to talk cryptocurrency for the fans, give him my explanation of this musician coin concept that takes the LTB coin model and applies it to individual unsigned musicians, and the difference between Doge and Bitcoin.
It just made me feel good. I liked seeing the interactions of people on the subreddit. I liked what people were talking about, and I wanted to be a part of it.
And finally, I'm joined by Peter Todd, Chief Scientist of the Mastercoin Foundation, to talk stealth addresses for you and me.
It makes it easier for you to do the right thing with regard to privacy. A Bitcoin address, whatever you do with it, is publicly visible. You are linking information about your transactions. You're essentially saying, all right, I did this transaction, then I did this transaction. Potentially I did a whole bunch of them.
Not to be missed. Quick shout out to the CoinScrum London-based meetup group. They're putting on a big Bitcoin debate event on April 5th and are looking for both attendees and speakers. Visit letstalkbitcoin.com/op, that's /OP, for more details. Enjoy the show.
This is Stephanie Murphy from Let's Talk Bitcoin, and we are at the Let's Talk Bitcoin lunch meetup at the Firewheel Cafe in the Lost Pines Hotel. I'm here with Christoph Atlas. Hi, Christoph.
Hi, good to be here.
Christoph is a friend of mine, and he came to the meetup, and I'm really glad to see him, but he also has a really important and cool project that he's working on that I really want to share with the audience, because this is something that we talk about a lot in the Bitcoin world. Where's the future of Bitcoin going? Are we going to a future where everything is tracked and we're going to be coin validated and scrutinized, and all of our finances are going to be out there in the open for stalker ex-husbands and creepy governments to look at? Or are we going to retain control over our financial privacy? And are we going to actually have the power to do what I think Bitcoin intended, which is, empower people over their own finances? So Christoph has written a book called the Anonymous Bitcoin book, right?
That's right, yeah.
So Christoph, tell me a little bit about the book and why you decided to write it.
What inspired me to write the book was I was seeing a lot of folklore about Bitcoin and its anonymity and the level of privacy that you would get with Bitcoin. If you read news articles or look at forum posts or whatever, you'll see a lot of people just saying, Bitcoin, it's an anonymous currency and stuff like that. And especially when it comes to things like the Silk Road, if people want to mischaracterize Bitcoin, one of the first things that they'll trot out is that it's this anonymous currency being used by criminals to buy drugs and stuff like that. And really, the design of Bitcoin is pretty open. And I think something that people would find surprising is that in many ways, Bitcoin has less financial privacy than the legacy banking system that we're coming out of. If you get a paycheck in the mail from your boss, you don't expect that he's going to be tracking what you're spending your money on, what kind of groceries you're buying, what are you picking up from CVS. But something like that could potentially happen with Bitcoin, depending on how people follow best practices for privacy and so forth. And since it's a nascent technology, people have always had a difficulty with privacy and technology, and they tend to do whatever comes easiest. And if you don't make privacy easy, then they won't use things in the most private way. And Bitcoin doesn't make it that easy to use it in a private way. There's a spectrum of privacy that you can have with Bitcoin, and on the extreme end, you can have a very high level of anonymity. But right now, the default and the way that people are using Bitcoin is that they're not getting a whole lot of financial privacy out of that. And so I wanted to write a book for people where if they decide that I wanted to first educate them about what the state of privacy is right now, what it's going to look like, what your privacy is going to look like if you continue to use Bitcoin in the way that most people are using it. And then I wanted to give them a very straightforward, leaving nothing up to the imagination approach to how to use Bitcoin in a very anonymous kind of fashion and get a lot of financial privacy out of the currency.
And you have a background in computer security, right?
Yeah, that's right. I've been a computer security researcher and consultant for a number of years. And I recently just quit my job to focus full-time on writing about Bitcoin and privacy.
Right. So can you give me an example of perhaps how a typical Bitcoin user might use Bitcoin and it could be totally traceable and they might not even know about it?
Sure. So I gave a talk at the conference the other day, and I gave this sort of hypothetical scenario where there's two people and one of them sends a tip to the other in Bitcoin. And I was describing how this would look on the blockchain. The blockchain is this public ledger of all of the Bitcoin transactions. We don't have anything like that for cash. There's no ledger of cash transactions, which is part of the reason why cash can be so anonymous. And so the way that these kind of transactions show up on the blockchain is that often we learn a lot about people's identity. Addresses get associated with one another. And particularly if there's something like where they don't have enough Bitcoin in one of their Bitcoin addresses to send the total that they want to send to the other person, they have to pool together from multiple accounts. And a lot of times their Bitcoin client will just kind of do this automatically for them.
So for instance, if you have a blog or a Twitter account or something and you post an address publicly, people could say, okay, well, we know Christoph owns this address. And on the blockchain, there are outputs from that address that are going to other change addresses, so those also must belong to him too, right?
Yeah, exactly. Change addresses or addresses being pooled together in order to get up to a total that you want to send. And so basically what's happening on the blockchain is that there is this incredible graph of people's Bitcoin addresses, and they don't see this happening. It's something that's going on, behind the scenes, and it's an incredible data mining tool for whoever wants to mine it, whether it's corporations or governments or just creepy, snoopy people that want to find out what you're doing. And you're not able to see the full effect of your finances. If you deal with something like cash or writing checks or whatever, you know exactly who it's going to, who's going to be able to see the check that you're handing, or who's standing around to watch your cash transaction. But the weird thing about Bitcoin is it's like cash, but the entire world is standing around watching the cash transaction. So I think it's really important. I consider it to be sort of a financial self-defense technique to learn how to use the currency privately and retain some privacy when you're doing your finances.
Now, what about the argument that everyone will trot out, if you have nothing to hide, what are you worried about?
That's a very old and common argument. There is this guy named Daniel J. Solove who wrote a paper a while ago called "I've Got Nothing to Hide and Other Misunderstandings of Privacy." Great paper. And basically what he's saying there is, even if you don't have something to hide, people in all tax jurisdictions and all legal jurisdictions still have some kind of legal risk that they're going to be blamed for something that they didn't actually do. We have real problems in court systems all over the world and with law enforcement and so forth, justice systems. And even if that doesn't happen to you, it happens to people all the time. So when you say, well, I don't have anything to hide, and therefore I'm not concerned about surveillance or censorship or whatever, you're throwing a bunch of other people under the bus. Fundamentally, it's an act of antipathy towards your fellow human being to throw that out as the standard, that if people are not doing anything bad, they shouldn't be worried about these type of things. And it has real world consequences for lots of people, very terrible consequences. So I think that financial privacy is something that we should invest in as a society. I think it's really important, whether you want to have a free anarchic society or if you want to have a healthy democratic society. In both cases, financial privacy is a very, very important thing.
You said something in your talk the other day that there was a law professor who threw out a statistic saying that every adult over the age of 18 could be, if they wanted to, indicted for some kind of federal crime in the U.S.
Yeah. Here's another statistic. In 2013, there were like 40,000 new federal laws that were passed on the books. And we actually don't know how many federal laws there are. There have been a number of organizations, legal organizations, that tried to count it because it's kind of important to know what the laws are. And they weren't able to. They tried for a long time. They gave up. So, if you don't know how many laws are out there, then you can't stop yourself from breaking them. And what this law professor is basically saying is there's so many laws on the books, some of them are mutually contradictory, that people are breaking laws all the time that they're completely unaware of. And yet the standard that we have in our society is ignorance of the law is no excuse. Meanwhile, there is no one that knows all of the laws, right? So that's kind of a dangerous combination of principles to go by. It means that really anyone could get nabbed if they have the misfortune of, getting on the wrong side of someone.
Or what's to stop, something that is not currently illegal from becoming illegal in the future and the enforcement being applied retroactively when there's this nice historical record in the blockchain, right?
Yeah, that happens all the time. I mean, it happened to Mt. Gox, for instance. Their financial troubles, I mean, they had incompetence at their leadership levels, but their financial trouble started when they had $5 million seized by the U.S. government for filling out some paperwork in the incorrect way and doing it in a way that was pretty much fine at the time that they filled out the paperwork, but then there was some rule that was changed after the fact, or some clarification that was given about these very nebulous rules after the fact, and they weren't able to receive the news of this change, go back and look at their paperwork and make the change, and they lost $5 million as a result, which really got the ball rolling on the collapse of Mt. Gox. So, and I think it's something that's important to all Bitcoin users, because in a lot of places in the world, governments are not going to look upon Bitcoin very favorably. In some places, there are going to be bans or restrictions. There are going to be criminal charges that are made related to Bitcoin. And so you don't want to be one of the people that has the misfortune of putting your finances out there on the open, on the blockchain, and then finding out that later on some legislator decided that what you happened to do, which was recorded on the blockchain a few years ago, was in fact illegal, and now you could be prosecuted for it. So this is why I think it's sort of a financial self-defense, not only having privacy from people that you're doing business with and just kind of snoopy, creepy people or corporations, but also keeping keeping yourself safe from the legal aspect of things as well.
Right, and it's not just yourself, right? Because it is possible to associate, to incriminate other people with your Bitcoin activity on the blockchain. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. After the talk, I had a developer that came up to me. He's working on some accounting software for Bitcoin for tax purposes and whatnot. And he was really concerned because he listened to the talk and he's been following this privacy stuff for a while, and he doesn't want to create a tool that where someone can come for his records and use that information to go after the customers of his customers. That obviously makes his product less attractive to the customers, and from a moral standpoint, he doesn't want to be partly responsible for someone being incriminated for something that they don't deserve to be incriminated for. So it's a real concern. If you care about your fellow human being, you don't want to be participating in a system where they come under some kind of misfortune. And so when you use Bitcoin privately, you're helping out the people that you do business with as well.
So, okay, people have heard this and they're thinking, well, how do I use Bitcoin privately? And obviously there's a whole book that you've written about this, but give us some quick tips about how people can get greater privacy with their Bitcoin use.
Well, it depends on who you think might be trying to look into your Bitcoin activity. So I like to use this term for people that are looking at the blockchain. I call them investigators because it's a morally agnostic term. It could be someone that is a thief that's looking for targets, or it could be someone that's trying to recover Bitcoins for someone that was stolen from. So we don't really know who's going to be looking at this stuff, but depending on who that person is that's investigating you, you'd have different techniques. What I sort of recommend for people is that you take the worst case scenario investigator into consideration, and if you have that covered, then everyone else that you could possibly look into your finances will also be covered in that situation. And the worst case investigator would be something like, someone working for the mob who's, trying to track down targets for theft, something like that. They have millions of dollars of resources. They're able to hack into internet service providers and get logs from customers' internet traffic and stuff like that. So I think there's probably two important categories of tools. One is the ability to kind of cover your tracks on side channels of information about your Bitcoin transaction. So like, for instance, if someone is logging all of the internet traffic out there on the internet, something like, the NSA's PRISM program or something along those lines, you need to have some tool to kind of hide the geographic origins of your internet traffic. So something like Tor or I2P and so forth.
Does a VPN work for that or no?
A VPN is good, but all it does is basically it forces the investigator to do some extra work in order to get access to the logs. So it just means that they would have to hack into your VPN or otherwise obtain logs from that VPN in order to get access to your data, as opposed to just being able to get it directly from your ISP or whatever. So it adds one step. I would much rather see people use something like Tor, where there is no Tor person to go to get access to logs. It's distributed all over the world. So it's a decentralized solution to privacy.
However, I have heard that if you use Tor but then you log onto Facebook with Tor, it might be pretty easy to associate, to track your identity on Tor. Is that right?
Sure. So you still have to Tor is a very kind of primitive tool. All it does is it hides the geographic origins of your internet traffic, but there's still lots of ways to correlate internet activity with your person. So this is something I talk about in the book, but you kind of have to manage your identities on the internet. If you have, for instance, a local localbitcoins.com account that you always log into through Tor, well, if you're using a whole bunch of different Bitcoin addresses with that account, and someone is able to get access to the localbitcoins.com logs, now they're able to identify a connection between that local Bitcoin's identity and all of the addresses that are associated with that identity. So there's this kind of identity management that you have to do in addition to using these tools. I'd like to see the tools get better so that they can do this kind of identity management for people, or make it very obvious exactly how that's working out, but we're not quite there yet. I think the best thing that we have is something like a Tails Linux, where at least it's configuring Tor for you. Because if you just try to install a Tor on your your Windows machine or your Mac machine or whatever, it's kind of complicated. The computers these days work in very complicated ways. So even if you're doing all of your web browsing through Tor, there's all these like weird messages that are being sent out, like DNS queries and so forth. So if you're using an all-in-one package like Tails Linux, then it kind of does all that stuff for you, but you still have to do your own identity management.
What about mixing?
Mixing is very important. It's a way of dealing with the openness of the blockchain. Mixing is, I kind of think of it like shuffling cards, right? So, and you want to make sure that you get a mixer that is doing a good job of shuffling the cards. So if you've ever played cards with some friends, right, you have some friends that are really good at shuffling. They're like bridging the cards and they look like Vegas dealers. And then you have some friends that don't know what the heck they're doing, and they kind of cut the deck once and they take a card and they stick it in the middle, they deal it out, and you're like, dude, I got the same hand except for this one card the last round. You're terrible at this. So when it comes to your financial privacy, you definitely want to have the friend that's, the Vegas dealer and not the cut in the deck kind of person. So not only do you have to use Bitcoin mixers, but you need to know which ones to use and how to use them. That's something that I talk about in depth in the book, and something that I'm definitely planning on covering a lot more in the future, writing reviews of mixers and talking about which kind of mixing technologies are superior.
This is Chris Joseph bringing you news on Next, the first true second-generation cryptocurrency for March 22nd, 2014. Next has not been very friendly to traditional miners because it does not use the same proof-of-work system that many other altcoins do. But this week, 2 new mining pools have appeared that address this. Hashrate.org and Pool.org, that's pool with 2 zeros instead of O's, have both created pools that automatically mine the most profitable altcoins and then do pool payouts in Next. Both systems are in beta, but both are working rather well. In other news, discussions on the Next Asset Exchange have gotten a little more philosophical as the community debates fees and wonders if decentralized asset trading may make market abuse by bots and high-frequency traders a thing of the past. For more general information on Next, head to nextcrypto.org or mynxt.org. And stay tuned for more news on Next on the next Let's Talk Bitcoin broadcast.
So Bitcoin Mixer is a tool that you can use to try to hide the path of your Bitcoins on the blockchain.
And this is tracking the specific Bitcoins, not the Bitcoin addresses?
Well, the Bitcoin, you'll have Bitcoins that are at a particular address, and you can keep sending them to new addresses. The problem with just sending them to new addresses is that it's pretty easy to follow these paths along the line. Mixers can use a variety of techniques to try and to mess up this path, basically. The way that the original mixers basically worked is they were centralized mixers, and they had a wallet service. So you would send them some Bitcoins, and then they would send you some other Bitcoins back. And they would basically do some off-blockchain accounting where they would say, okay, Johnny sent me some Bitcoins to this address. I'm going to send him some Bitcoins from another address that has no relationship to it on the blockchain. And I'm going to do my own database to keep track of this accounting, and I'll charge him a little fee to do this. And this may or may not be totally effective, but it's a way of giving you a little bit more privacy than just using Bitcoin on a normal basis. Mixing is absolutely still changing rapidly as a technology. The next generation of mixers is going to be peer-to-peer decentralized mixing. We have that going on in blockchain.info with their shared coin service, which is based on CoinJoin. And
do you have to opt into that, or is it an opt-out thing?
It's an opt-in thing. So you have to specifically say, they have like a send screen, and you have to say, I want to do a shared coin send as opposed to a regular send. It does cost a small amount. They charge you a little fee in order to do it, just for transaction fees, basically, because you want to have multiple rounds of this. And so basically you'll be doing a 10 up to 10 transactions in order to just do the one send as opposed to just a normal send. And you'll be doing it with other blockchain.info customers that are using the shared coin service.
Okay, so if the only people who opt into shared coin are people who are concerned about their privacy because they do have something to hide, is that a problem?
It is a problem because we know from other areas of privacy technology that when people need to opt in order to use it, most people just absolutely won't use it. It's a little bit of extra work. The graphical interfaces for this privacy technology tend to be kind of clunky and awkward because there's not enough customers to incentivize them to design really clean, easy-to-use interfaces. So you get very low participation. And the problem with that is that Bitcoin privacy fundamentally comes down to anonymity. You need to be able to do anonymous transactions. You need to be able to own Bitcoin anonymously. And anonymity is all about participation. The more people that participate in an anonymity system, the more anonymity everyone has. So low participation also means weaker privacy for the people that are actually opting into the system.
Okay, so opting into privacy features or privacy enhancing features is actually a form of activism to take Bitcoin as a whole to a more private and secure place, right?
Yeah, absolutely. similar to the Tor networks, all right? So Tor is all about people using each other's internet connections as an ephemeral or a temporary identity. And the more people that use Tor, the stronger anonymity is for all Tor users. And some people are using Tor for really important things like, blogging under dictatorial regimes and whistleblowing and all that kind of stuff. So it's really important that they have the good privacy. And people for a long time have been practicing activism by participating in the Tor network, running a Tor node, using Tor and so forth to help out these kind of activists. And I think that the same thing applies to Bitcoin privacy. You can help out these activists and just people in general that deserve to have financial privacy. Everyone deserves financial privacy, I think. So when you participate in these systems, you're helping out your fellow human as well. It's definitely a form of empathy and of freedom activism to participate in privacy systems with regards to cryptocurrencies.
Okay, and what are some other ways that people can help push Bitcoin forward toward a more privacy-preserving status?
I think the best thing that we can do in Bitcoin, the way that we've had the most success in pushing forward successful technologies is by voting with your wallet, right? So if you have the choice between a bunch of different wallet services, pick the wallet service that has the best privacy features. So right now, I think blockchain.info is a very strong competitor with their shared coin service, which they're providing for no fee to their company. They don't receive any fees on that right now. They used to, and then they were like, we hate coin validation. We want to make it easier for people to have private transactions. And so they took the very brave and noble step of removing their fees for that service. So you want to pick a service like that or dark wallet or whatever it is that has the best features. You can also let people know that you want to have these features. You can write emails to the developers. When you introduce your friends to Bitcoin, you can let them know, like, hey, there are these privacy concerns. You should use a service like blockchain.info because they have these privacy features. So those are all ways of propagating the meme that Bitcoin privacy is important.
Cool. All right. So just to sum up briefly, for somebody who's totally new to this and wants to do as much as possible to preserve their privacy, would you say you recommend this blockchain.info wallet with the shared coin service, and give a few other tips and just let people know what they can do for a call to action?
Yeah, so shared coin is excellent. Just Google around and search coin join and coin validation and stuff like that, and just get a little bit informed on what the state of these topics are. You can of course read my book where I cover these extensively as well, and look into using things like Tor. Tor is actually you can. So if you're going to use shared coin, all you really need to do is download. In order to combine that with Tor, you can download the Tor browser bundle, and that makes things pretty simple. That's something that I cover in the book as well, but people can figure that out on their own, of course. Just start using these kind of technologies and trying them out and seeing how they are. I think they're quite easy to use once you figure out what they are and get accustomed to them.
But you just have to take that step to opt in.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and your website is anonymousbitcoinbook.com, where you have a lot of helpful blog posts actually about cold storage and about political issues and all kinds of other things. So people can go there, anonymousbitcoinbook.com, and order your book. It's now available, right?
Yeah, that's correct. There's the book. There's a premium package that gives you even more information. You can also follow me on Twitter at AnonymousCoin. And I'm definitely going to be covering this stuff extensively in the future. So more blog posts. I'm on the Bitcoin group regularly, which is another show that I recommend people check out with Andreas and some other great folks.
All right. Thanks so much, Christoph. This was great.
Thanks for having me.
Today on Let's Talk Bitcoin, we're joined by Ross Mintzer of RossMintzerBand.com. Ross, you're a musician and have been working with cryptocurrencies for a while. Really, thank you for joining us today to share your experience with Bitcoin.
Thank you, Adam. It's great to be here.
How long have you been making music, and how long have you been interested in cryptocurrency, and where do those things overlap?
I've been making music my whole life. I'm 26 now. I started, playing the saxophone as an 8-year-old. So it's been quite a while. Now I sing mostly and produce music. I heard about cryptocurrency fairly recently, actually, maybe only about a few months ago. And it really resonated with what I was doing. I had been doing a lot of social media advertising to connect with people with my music around the world. And I've always been thinking about how should a musician be fairly compensated for his work. When I started to learn about digital currency and the different options out there, it's like a light bulb went off. Like, this is the missing link to monetizing in a fair way the work and music that I'm making and creating.
When you discovered that, what was your next step? What was your first attempt at using this to do that?
First, it was to investigate and to try to understand Bitcoin and the other alt currencies and what kind of possibilities are out there. The first step is simply I just put my address, my Bitcoin address, my Dogecoin address to start accepting donations on my website. I mean, that was the first thing. It's pretty easy too.
Interesting. So you accept Bitcoin and Dogecoin. Those were the two cryptocurrencies that you went to.
That's where I'm at now. It could change, it really could. Litecoin too, maybe. I'm still learning a lot.
Let me ask, what was it the thing specifically? Usually when we talk to people and they accept more than one cryptocurrency, more than Bitcoin, it's Bitcoin and Litecoin, because those have been kind of the gold and silver analogy that people have liked to use.
Yeah.
Is there anything in particular about Dogecoin? Was it just the timing? It was getting big and so it was exciting to be involved with? I mean, help me here.
It was the community. I was in a certain place in my life and I don't know, it just kind of hit me. It was one of these, it just made me feel good. I liked seeing the interactions of people on the subreddit. I liked what people were talking about and I wanted to be a part of it.
You wanted to support it, basically, is what it sounds like.
I just wanted to be a part of it. There was the first Dogecoin party we had, I think, last week in New York City, and I let them use my sound system. That was at the NYC Bitcoin Center. It was cool.
So how's that going? And do you notice any differences between the Bitcoin side of things and the Dogecoin side of things as far as you as an artist looking for, remuneration?
I feel like at this point it's too soon to really tell. I'm curious to see. It's like a lot of people I've connected with so far, unfortunately, haven't even heard of digital currency or know very little about it, and they're not using it yet. And I believe that once everybody knows, like more people understand what it is and the potential and what it's capable of doing, then I'll be able to see some results more. Because right now, if I'm not really targeting this niche group of digital currency users, then it's hard to tell right now.
Well, let's talk about that for a second. So I think you're going with a tipping model, right? You're using a tipping model?
Right now it's just a tipping model. Okay. Absolutely.
So I don't think that that's an end game for you. You're not actually against selling your music. This is just a first step, or are you producing your music, giving it away for free so that you get the maximum distribution, and then just asking people to give you value for the value that they get from it, which is very similar to what we've done with Let's Talk Bitcoin in our listener base.
Exactly.
What is it that you hope to achieve from this? Are you looking just for feedback, in the form of, hey, I got a bunch of tips, that means people like what I'm doing? Or are you actually trying to, would you like to live off of these funds? How would you like to see this develop? And are tips the ideal vehicle for this? Or do you think that this is kind of a stopgap? That might be a big question.
It might be a larger question. I think that's more of how is the artist or content creator treated in society? Like, how do we look at the artist in a large, but I think with the digital currency, tipping bots for social media, for Twitter, they're making one for Facebook. I think that's such a big deal because I've connected with so many people using social media. Now that something like this is capable, where a person around the world can support me in a small way, instantly from their virtual wallet to mine, that even is a big deal. There's this coin called Florin Coin. One of the developers spends a lot of time at the New York NYC Bitcoin Center. His name is Joseph Viscella, and he had an idea with the protocol of the Florin Coin where you could send a message when you send somebody money. So you could also send, let's say, your email with your money. And he has this idea called the Florin Exchange. And so basically as a musician, like many times, like people have sent me their email and I've sent them my music for free. But now the idea that they could send me, some money and their email in one deal, and then I get the money and I send my song to them, and there's no third party platform. Like there's no bank or iTunes or any other group that get their hands on that. And that to me seems like a really big deal. That would be so cool if there was something like that.
So it's a bit like somebody wants to order something from you. So it's a bit like they, take like a bunch of coins and then wrap a message around it and throw it at you. And you don't know necessarily who threw it at you, but you've got the address on the message, and so you know where to send the thing in return.
Yeah, it's really cool. I mean, it's like the virtual. If you like came up to me and bought my CD for like $5 and I gave you the CD in person,
right.
It's like really is person to person virtually. Like, and that's really cool.
That's really interesting. So we're actually going to turn this around now, Ross, because I think I have some ideas that I'd like you to ask me questions about. But real quickly, I just want to tell you another thing you might want to check out for your music, if you do want to offer some for sale, is a site like CoinLock, actually, which is it's like a kind of virtual vending machine where you set up a contract once. You'll like upload a song, put the price that you want, put the address that the payment should go to, and then you can distribute that website, that has all the information for it. And whenever somebody buys that from you, it sends you, I believe it's 98% of the amount. The site keeps 2%, and that person gets to download one copy in their browser without having an account or logging in at all. It's just,
wow.
It happens right there. It's super cool. There are all of these really interesting automated tools, because what you're saying is great, but it's very manual. You have to send out a copy for each one of these. So you could do both. Yeah. Anyways, I just wanted to share that with you.
Really? Is that called CoinLock?
Yeah, it's called coinlock.com.
I'm going to check that out.
Recently, I talked about LTB coin, which is a coin that we're creating for the Let's Talk Bitcoin network that we're going to accept exclusively for advertising. And there are a couple of other things, a couple of other value adds that you'll be able to essentially do with it that you won't be able to do, or that'll be much cheaper to do with LTB coin compared to Bitcoin or compared to dollars. One of the other really interesting use cases for this, Ross, is artists who are new and unsigned can essentially use this same model and create a coin that they guarantee they will accept for their music moving forward, and they will accept for certain things moving forward. So for a high amount of your coin, you might have lunch with someone or something like that. In the beginning, when you create these, you're going to create them for nothing, because the value that is imbued into them comes from the fact that people like your music or like whatever it is that you're doing and have an interest in supporting it and buying it, and think that it will become more popular in the future. Because all of these currencies, wow. Exactly, right? So because all of these currencies are deflationary currencies where all of the money supply is created at once, and then it's just an issue of distributing it over a period of time based on whatever makes sense with that particular coin, you can create stakeholders. So if you sell early CDs, for example, you could include a couple of your coins with each CD that goes out and make all of those people stakeholders. If you wanted to raise money, you can sell some of the coins in an auction sort of environment, or sell them to people who really like to support you, because again, they're not just throwing money at you. You're actually giving them something back valuable in return. And if you're successful, of course, if you fail, then probably won't be worth anything. But they were never worth anything to begin with. But if you succeed, you have all of these people who are vested in your success and gain along with you. It's very interesting.
That is a really cool idea, Adam. And thank you for sharing that with me. I see it, and gosh, that's really cool. I hope somebody does that. I could see somebody potentially doing that in the future. I mean, how far are you along with your LTB coin?
I originally thought I was going to have to create a new altcoin, but what I discovered is that actually all the things that I want to do, I can do with user-created assets on one of these other platforms like Mastercoin or Counterparty, or eventually Ethereum and BitShares and things like that. And NXT also, I believe, just rolled out their asset exchange. So all of this stuff was impossible like 3 weeks ago, and now there are multiple platforms that you can actually do it on right now. So yeah, no, absolutely. Wow. Did I blow your mind?
You did a little. It's It's really open. It's just open and interesting what you can do with these digital currency. It really is interesting. I'm curious. Like maybe, would I do that? I guess like the stuff you just said is a little bit over my head. Like even if I was trying to like let's pretend I'm like I really don't know that much at all. But like, is there like a site I can go to that I can like put my Ross Mincer Band coin like and then press like a create button? Is that possible yet?
Well, actually it is. There is a site called CoinGen that will let you do that, but the problem there, Ross, if you create an altcoin, you are basically starting from the ground up, and you can fork anything out there because the cryptocurrency ecosystem is open source. So any work that has been done in the open source, you can take from the current iteration of it and create your own copy and start building from there. So it's very easy to bootstrap in on that side. But what you do need to do is you need to mine. You need to actually have people who are supporting and providing security to the network and essentially powering the transactional engine. Whereas with Ross Mincer coin, maybe you won't have that in the beginning. And so it creates a situation where in the very beginning of a coin, it's very dangerous to be small because someone can take it over and, just kind of have their way with it. But with these meta coins, essentially what they're doing is they're altcoins that are built on top of Bitcoin, or they're just altcoins by themselves that have the ability to create other coins on top of them through a simple user interface that takes, somewhere between 1 and 10 minutes. And literally it would just be like filling out the name and putting in the amount that you want to create. And if there are any specific rules or contracts that are going into it, you include that. And so it becomes less about the technical hurdle and much more about what are the rules for your currency, right? What are the things that add value to your currency, and what are the rules under which they will be sold or distributed to other people? So we've gotten way off course here, clearly, but I thought that it's hard to do right now because nobody's done it yet, like you said. But somebody is going to do it. Somebody's going to be first, and it's going to happen in like the next month.
Joseph's idea with the Florin Exchange was like there'd be like many different artists selling their music, and so I guess like if it wasn't just my band, but like let's say it was like a record label, like and they all used one coin, and maybe that would help that issue of somebody like taking it over at the beginning, kind of getting it out of the nascent stage of the coin into like a more mature coin, so it's safer to use.
I think that we're going to see all kinds of things, and a lot of them aren't probably going to work, but some of them will.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, if you don't fail, you're never going to achieve anything. So I think with all this stuff, we need to just go ahead and make mistakes, because that's how we move ahead with all things, technology and music too. You can't be afraid to make mistakes in music if you want to get better.
We're playing out with one of your songs here. Is there so cool. So Ross Mincer, rossmincerband.com. Any final comments here?
No, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be on the show, and I think the show's great, so thank you so much, Adam.
Thank you very much, Ross. We'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
And when your heart and nerve and sinew have served their turn long after they are gone, so hold on when there's nothing in you and tell me what you said to them to hold on. Get back
CryptoKit is the world's first Chrome browser Bitcoin wallet. It's the easiest, fastest Bitcoin wallet payment system. With a simple one-click install, it takes just seconds to get your wallet set up. And because CryptoKit finds the address and payment for you, there's no more fussing around or tab switching. CryptoKit is more than just a wallet. It comes with a preloaded PGP encrypted social network, news feeds from Reddit and Google, and up-to-date charts from exchanges. Finally, CryptoKit Directory allows you to make two-click payments with any of the BitPay merchants. Once you install CryptoKit, you won't need anything else. For more information or to download CryptoKit, visit CryptoKit.com.
The BitGive Foundation is a non-profit charitable giving organization leveraging the power of the Bitcoin community to improve public health and the environment worldwide. Help us demonstrate the significant impact of Bitcoin in addressing these critical issues on a global scale. Support international giving in Bitcoin. Please visit our website at www.bitgivefoundation.org. That's www.bitgivefoundation.org.
Today we're joined by Peter Todd, a core Bitcoin developer and chief scientist of the Mastercoin Foundation. Peter, thanks for joining me today on Let's Talk Bitcoin.
Yeah, you're welcome.
So I listed two of your projects, but you're actually pretty prolific. I recently saw that you're going to be auditing the Counterparty Protocol. I want to know, are there any other projects that you'd like to name drop that people should check out?
I think what's kind of interesting about what Mastercoin's done with my role as chief scientist is we see it that decentralized finance is so small as a field that we shouldn't really be thinking in terms of being in competition with each other as much as being in competition with centralized finance. So even though I work, as chief scientist at Mastercoin, like you said, I'm also auditing Counterparty, and I'm also helping out with Colored Coin's work as well.
I think that's the ethos, frankly, to be moving forward right now. There's so much room for collaboration, so much stuff that needs to be built, and we're all kind of rowing in the same direction here anyways. So since it's all open source, I think this is the way that it makes a lot of sense to do. So I'm glad to see you guys are taking that ethos, and that's been true pretty much of all my interactions with Mastercoin folks. The reason why we're having this conversation today isn't actually about Mastercoin. It's about stealth addresses, which are something that you started talking about, I guess, a couple of months ago. Let's pretend for a second that I haven't done any research and that I'm just some schmo of a podcaster. What's a stealth address and why is it relevant to me?
I think what it really comes down to is it makes it easier for you to do the right thing with regard to privacy. Because a Bitcoin address is something that whatever you do with it is publicly visible. So what it comes down to is if you use a Bitcoin address twice, you are linking information about your transactions. You're essentially saying, all right, I did this transaction, then I did this transaction. Potentially I did a whole bunch of them. And that's information that you don't necessarily want other people to know. A great example is, all right, you get paid by your company every month. Do you want every single paycheck to end up on the same address so that it's kind of obvious how much you're getting paid, how often it is and so on? You're much better off if that information isn't public. And to make that possible, well, you have to figure out how do you receive a payment from someone twice without using the same address. And all a stealth address is just a bit of cryptography math so that you can essentially give someone else this piece of data that lets them then construct addresses that can pay you. And even though they're not linked publicly, your wallet can still recover the funds from them and still spend them.
So these are like, I want to say it's something like hierarchical deterministic, client-side wallets where the sender generates it? I mean, explain this to me more. I don't understand.
So you brought up HD wallets. And an HD wallet is potentially another way of doing this kind of thing, in that with an HD wallet, you could potentially give someone else what's sort of called the root. And then from that root pub key, they can then also derive addresses. And then you can set up your wallet software to look for addresses that could have been derived from that root. The problem with it is it's kind of inflexible because the only thing you can really do is you can say have address number 1, number 2, etc. If your wallet doesn't have to be looking at the right address, or maybe the numbers get out of match or something, or you really want to actually give this to 2 people because it's more convenient. It's a lot of overhead and a lot of complexity to it from your user's point of view. But fundamentally, yes, you're right. I mean, it is a way of giving someone a piece of information from which then they can derive multiple addresses to pay you. So, with that respect, yeah, they are very similar.
This is helpful to me then because, like, Let's Talk Bitcoin as a podcast, we would put out this piece of information about us, and then people would be able to use that to derive addresses that they could send money to us. We wouldn't have generated the address. They generated the address for us, and it routes to us, right?
Yeah. And this is a key problem with HD wallets. Let's suppose you wanted a donation address, or you didn't want it to be public who has donated to you and how much. If you just publish an HD wallet address, the problem is that both sides of the sending of the funds and receiving of the funds essentially have to regenerate the same address. So if we have the root and then we generate address number 1, on your side, you also have to generate address number 1 and look for it in the blockchain. So if it's donation address, well, what index do you use? If I'm going to donate money to you, my wallet software somehow has to find an index that hasn't been already used, and then not have that space, that search space of indexes be too big, because otherwise your wallet software is then having to go search for thousands of possible addresses. So you get this very hard to achieve trade-off that, in practice adds a lot of overhead and isn't really practical in a lot of cases.
So then what's the use for these things?
I think for an HD wallet route, for the use case of, you giving an address to someone to pay you, it does probably work in cases where there's a one-to-one relationship. I mean, I could say give my employer HD wallet route, and because they know which addresses of that chain they've used, it's easy for them to use a new one each time, with a bit of bookkeeping.
So this is more like setting up a direct deposit relationship with your employer than it is being able to just give an address to all your friends and have it so that they can anonymously pay you, because they all aren't keeping track of who's sending what payments to you at what point.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's not a bad description, yeah. I think at the technical level, that description kind of misses a lot of stuff. But in terms of what the user experience is, yeah, I think that's quite correct.
Well, I'll believe that I'm missing some stuff on the technical level. That's definitely true. I have a lot of things that I'm working on, and I have a lot of these problems. Setting up a way for people to donate to us, like we're creating an application for smartphones right now that is going to have built-in tipping stuff. And it would be great, and we have on the one side, like I view this as solving the other end of another problem that I have. We're basically setting up a system called BitSplit. That's an idea from Kyle of CoinTalk, where you can essentially have an address route then out to multiple addresses that, like one person could get 10%, one person could get 15%, one person could get 50%, and it's totally arbitrary. So this is kind of like the other side of that. If you attach this to the front of it, then you have a way for it to be totally private and still go through all this distribution automatically.
Yep.
Could you do it? I mean, like you're saying it doesn't...
Well, say for instance, so for your application there, you want to be able to publish an address and take the funds that receive at that and split it up. Now, as you know, by creating that singular address, you have the problem that if it gets reused, you lose some privacy there. So with a stealth address, what that would enable from your point of view is that your site would be publishing stealth addresses instead of normal Bitcoin addresses. So when I say made a donation that's supposed to be split up across, say, 10 parties, that donation would be not visible to anyone else on the blockchain, or at least I should say it wouldn't be linkable to anyone else. And I'd essentially generate a new addresses via the stealth method, pay you, your wallet software would see the money, and then the next guy that comes along pays that address, they see the money, and it all works out. I guess the important thing is, so right now, the main alternative is you have an interaction. So let's suppose your website had a button that you'd click. It's, pop up a new address every single time a user wanted to donate, right? That's all well and good, but by popping up a new address, you have an interaction between you and them that you can't get rid of. And that's really what stealth addresses tries to avoid, so you don't have to have that overhead.
Okay. As a normal user, if I wanted to implement something like this, what would that look like? Is this something that's still in a theoretical stage? Is it something where there are APIs out there and I can point a developer to it?
It's not to the stage where There's tested APIs and tested implementations. It's at the stage where people are writing code to implement it and testing it out and making sure that, things go work as expected. I personally am writing what I'm calling the stealth address reference implementation. And then I'm doing that in conjunction with the Dark Wallet / LibBitcoin guys who are also doing an implementation. And our goal there is that with 2 implementations, we can essentially make sure that they do interoperate and the actual specification that'll get written, is correct and is something that then people like wallet authors can take and implement stealth addresses from that.
Well, sounds great. Before we go on this one, while I've got you here, you were brought on with the Mastercoin Foundation to address some of the complaints about the protocol and some of the incongruities in it. Can you address any of that? Can you talk about some of the work that you've done to change the protocol and what some of those complaints were and how they were addressed? This could be an entirely different interview too, just throwing this out there.
Yeah.
So I'm legitimately, I'm very curious.
I guess the big thing I'll go say up front is you got to remember nobody in the decentralized finance space really knows 100% what's actually will or will not work. This is a field that just did not exist even, maybe a year ago.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely.
So,
I mean, that's
yeah, it is very, very experimental. And I think what specifically has happened with Mastercoin is I think it's actually been a fair number of smaller changes. Things like making sure that, they understand their options, for instance, to make sure Mastercoin transactions aren't blocked, making sure that they understand the issues around consensus with Mastercoin. I think a big and very important one is I came up with what seems to be a reasonable way to upgrade these systems so that if, you need to change Mastercoin and add a new feature or change how it works, we now believe we know how to upgrade it and have an upgrade process that operates smoothly. And I think more long-term then, there's, and I'd say kind of this is sort of the other half of what I'm working on. I'm more working on Bitcoin itself, making sure that Bitcoin can scale, making sure that the Bitcoin protocol itself works in a variety of ways, stays decentralized and so on. And fundamentally, that's because Mastercoin depends on it, as do all these other decentralized finance stuff, with one exception of Ethereum.
I believe NXT also doesn't rely on it, but it's not using a blockchain-like structure.
I wouldn't necessarily call NXT decentralized.
Really? That's interesting.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, their proof of stake algorithm for consensus, it in turn depends on developer checkpoints. So without the developers, the proof of stake algorithm doesn't work.
Interesting. Peter, we're going to have to do a longer interview at another time.
Yeah. You're getting into very big topics there.
That's completely true. It's a very big topic. And it's such an interesting time right now because I think that, you view yourself kind of like how I view myself, which is a free agent basically in this space. There's so much stuff going on. You really can't pick a team. It's just about looking at all the innovation and trying to learn from everything. And then at the end of this, we wind up incorporating all the best elements into the same things because it's all open source anyways, right?
That's absolutely true. And if anything, I think that's kind of one of the interesting things about stealth address is simply that on a technical level, it is actually fairly simple. So it's kind of nice to then have a project that, I can reasonably see getting implemented in a relatively short period of time versus other stuff where, the whole scope of what decentralized finance is going to do is just so complex and there's so many different moving parts that sometimes, it's kind of hard to wrap your head around.
Peter Todd, Chief Scientist of the Mastercoin Foundation. Thank you very much for your time.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to episode 94 of Let's Talk Bitcoin. Visit us at letstalkbitcoin.com for more content, subscribe to all our feeds, tip our shows, and of course, try out the other shows at the LTB network, like Paul Boyer's award-winning Mad Money Machine, Ed and Ethan's live Bitcoin report every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Pacific Time, Dr. Stephanie Murphy and Brian Sovereign on the Section Science Hour, and of course, the boys in Nashville serving up Bitcoins and gravy. Content for today's episode is provided by Dr. Stephanie Murphy, Atlas Christov, Ross Mincer, Peter Todd, and Adam B. Levine. This episode was produced and edited by Adam B. Levine with additional editing by Denise Levine. Music for this episode was provided by Jared Rubens, Ross Mincer, and General Fuzz. Any questions or comments? email Adam at letstalkbitcoin.com. And check us out at ltbcoin.com too if you're interested in more about LTBcoin. See you next time.